Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome folks, The Hungry Gamer is back with my first ever RPG book review. And admittedly, I am not a master of this. I spent a lot of time playing first edition Pathfinder years ago, and even in that I was certainly never an expert. And it was kind of something that I did before I discovered board games, which was more interesting to me. However, when I went to Gen Con this year, there was a publisher that reached out to, I think, everybody on the media list and said, if anybody wants to come get a copy of one of our books, please do. And I was like, well, I don't know that I need to do that. But then I got to thinking about it. I was like, I do have some friends that are deep into D&D and really, really just love it. So I said, you know what? Let's do this thing, and I will basically get input from who I think is actually an expert to kind of talk about these. So with that said, I have my first RPG book review of Rultmoork. And I've said that wrong. And this is an adventure. Entire adventure in a book from low level up to, well, not high level, but higher level. And this is a book that basically, for the most part, it's a giant dungeon. And you're going to go through the dungeon is basically what's going to happen here. And so I'm just going to jump right in because this is a source book, really. And so what do I like about this RPG book? First off, it's a really nice book. I mean, just literally the book. It's nice. It's good quality pages, hardcover. It has little ribbons in there where you can mark stuff. I love ribbons in books. They're just the best. I love it. They've got multiple ribbons in there. And the art kind of has an old school vibe. And to me, that feels kind of appropriate because this is just a dungeon of dungeons. And what it reminds me of a little bit is the Rappan Athuk. I said that wrong. Kind of adventure set that I think was from maybe Frog Guide Games or something like that. Flying Frog. I don't know. But that was a 3.5, and then it got eventually updated for Pathfinder Mega Dungeon. Just this huge, massive dungeon that you were going through, and there was crazy fights and crazy story and the lore of how this dungeon kind of turned evil and all that. And this reminds me of that in the sense that it is a dungeon of dungeons. That's what this thing is about. And it's kind of got an interesting thing. This is a little bit of a spoiler, but you can start at the top or the bottom. So you can kind of go across the cliffs and go across a bridge and start at the top and go down, or there's a way to get in at the bottom and go up depending on what the players find. And I find that pretty darn clever. Now, along with that, kind of looking inside of the source book, it's got a lot of clever encounters. A lot of things that, and for someone who played a fair amount of role-playing games for a little while, it has enough stuff that it would kind of keep you guessing. But mostly we're doing dungeon crawl, dive, combat, traps, those kinds of things. And I think all around it's pretty well done. I will also say that there's a lot of lore in here. There's a lot of story that kind of tells you what happened, how it became what it is, why the area around is like it is, and a lot of these bits of lore you're going to discover as you go through the book. It really does do a little time release lore as you go through. So, what are my quibbles with this source book? The first thing is directly related to that lore. It's a different lore than like the traditional D&D and all those things, so you have to care, right? You have to care about the lore that's going on, and if you don't care, a lot of the book's going to be wasted. And there is that possibility that you're just going to be transposing different lores onto it, and you certainly can do that if you want, or maybe just be pulling things out of it to kind of put into your own campaigns. And I do think it works pretty well for that. A lot of these encounters you can pull as kind of set pieces to put into your own campaign. But really the only thing that I'm going to say is that my main quibble here is it really is about the dungeon and the dive. This is not what I would call a story-forward adventure. There's certainly story in there, but as I said, you can kind of pull it out. It's really about the dungeon. It's really about the dive. Now, that is my amateur opinion. Now, I'm going to give you my thoughts from my friend Sinjin, who is a master of these things, and he loves it. He loves the lore. He loves digging into books and stuff. And so these are his thoughts. And so a lot of what he had to say echoed some of the things that I was saying about really it's about the deep chug and grind through the dungeon. And I'm not using those words necessarily as negatives, but it's really about that. There is, as he put it, some amazing lore, and one of the things that he highlighted that he really liked was the way that in this there are these rules around flow and stagnation, and it has to do with kind of the lore of this cult that's kind of contaminated this place, and there are these flow and stagnation tokens that you're kind of earning as you're going through. And he said that he thought that was really, really interesting. But on the other hand, you have with those tokens, you have the possibility to trap yourselves as a party. If you make bad choices, you can find yourself getting stuck or frustrated because you've made bad choices around these kind of flow and stagnation tokens. So really, his main takeaway was, this is a fantastic adventure if you have an advanced group that is looking for a mechanic-heavy dungeon crawl where you're really going through and making sure you're not making mistakes, and at the same time you have a DM that's willing to do a lot of prep to go with it, because again, those flow and stagnation tokens can wind up being mistakes if you use them in a stupid way. Or, on the other hand, he kind of echoed what I was thinking. There's a lot of deep, interesting lore that is here in this book that you can siphon off and use in your other adventures. Same thing with some of the different set pieces that are kind of built into this dungeon. So, there you have it, folks. That is my first review of a RPG book. Obviously, thank you to Sinjin for giving me a deeper look into it and thinking of things that just never occurred to me. And I will be doing at least one more of these, because initially when they sent me the Rultmoork book, I had actually asked for a different book, and there was some kind of mix-up at the distributor, and I wound up with this one. So I said, that's okay, we'll cover this. I've gotten the next one also, and I've looked through it a bit, and he currently has it right now. But if you are looking for a really cool cult idea with some cool lore, this is a book worth checking out. If you're looking for a really cool, in-depth, complicated, mechanics-heavy dungeon crawl, dungeon dive that is a long, many session thing, then this is a good book for you as well. And it's also a good book if you're looking for just some interesting set pieces that you can just kind of pull out of there. So there you have it, folks. That is Rultmoork. That is so hard to say, Rultmoork, but there's a Rultmoork. I keep messing it up. And overall, I think it's really cool. I don't play a lot of role-playing games anymore, but I am in a once a year group that actually Sinjin's running. So there's a chance I might get to see some of these things at some point in the near future. So there you have it, folks. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.